All right, so in the real tradition of going with the flow today, we're now taking what was a Facebook Live session, and we're just going to record now because it cut us off for overheating again. So
we were starting to talk about light workers, and I asked you the question, will you tell us what a light worker is for those who are in the business of light working, those who think that they are going to be light workers, or those who have never heard about it before.
So for all of the above. Got it.
All of the above.
First thing I want to clarify is that what a light worker is subjective. It is, everyone has a slightly different perspective, and every light worker you're ever going to meet is going to give you a slightly different explanation. So understand that what I share is for what resonates with me. Just see if that resonates with you. Let me know if that resonates with you, honey.
Okay.
And just know that there's no right or wrong answer as to what it is to be a light worker. It's just, I'll give you a better explanation based on what I understand. So a light worker is someone, from my understanding, who has determined to take the path towards a higher level of consciousness and a higher vibration, knowing with a full awareness that as their vibration increases, it increases the world's vibration around them. So I don't want to say most of us know, but many people know that we live basically a pretty unconscious life for a good majority of it, because we're born into circumstances that we really don't choose. At least consciously, we don't choose in this life. We may choose before. Everyone's feeling is subjective about that. I believe that I chose into my life experiences. However, once you're born and you're a baby, you're just a little ball of squish that's kind of at everybody else's free will. And in that situation, we start to develop coping mechanisms, especially because sometimes we're born into like wonderful circumstances, and sometimes we're born into horribly abusive circumstances, and sometimes there's the all between. We get coding on the playground, we get coding on our soccer teams, and we get coding on our coding at the grocery store. We get coding from our grandparents, and we get it from our friends, and it really happens everywhere, especially when we're unconscious to what's happening. And what that does is it starts to create, as much as we don't really want to believe that we're kind of like robots, we kind of become like robots because we develop patterns, and we start to just kind of follow through those same cycles, and we wonder why the same cycles keep happening in our lives. But the reason why is because we're kind of drawing them in based on our energetic experience. So if at some point it dawns on you that you're not living your life as consciously as you can, what happens is you consciously take that into your hands and start to move forward in a way that is not always easy. It's not always, this hippy dippy, like meditating on the top of a mountain type of stuff. I mean, trust me, the process of awakening, or the process of entering into a soul conscious contract, you're evolutionarily moving forward, is a process that is the best of times and the worst of times, but it's a conscious process. And once you become conscious, you are making a conscious choice to increase your vibration. Now, just like a crystal, the vibration, every human gives off a vibration. We affect everyone that we walk around, no matter what. And sometimes that vibration's a real dense vibration, and sometimes that vibration's a real high vibration. And it's not like you're bad if you give off a bad vibration, or a dense vibration. It's not like you're good if you give off a high vibration. But understand that the high vibration is most likely based more in a place of love and light. It's less likely to be coming from a place of judgment or negative impact. So those who would consider themselves light workers, for the most part, have made a conscious choice to increase their vibration, to positively, from an energetic standpoint, impact the world around them, knowing that every good decision they make positively affects everyone around them, that every loving decision that they make affects everyone around them, that everyone whose life they change affects mountainous ripple effects around them. And so it's just a conscious decision to be a crystal. It's a conscious decision to lighten the world in a way that is honest and true and raw, and sometimes that doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes that doesn't I think I've cried snotty cries tears more in the last couple of years than any other time in my life, but they were really important tears to cry, and they deserved to be honored. And in the process of doing that, I raised my vibration.
So are you saying that when you're awake or when you're conscious, you're aware of what happens every second?
Absolutely not. And awakening is a process. It's not like, the day I decided I didn't want to live that life anymore, I just suddenly was like, okay, I'm awake. I would be hesitant to even consider myself awake today, but I would certainly say that I'm making a conscious decision every single day. And when I recognize that there's patterns that I'm falling into again that have negatively impacted my life, I choose to pattern interrupt and say, you know what, just because that's how I used to be, or just because that's what I did yesterday, or just because that's what I did 4 minutes ago, doesn't mean I have to do it right now.
So we're awakening from old patterns, or awakening from what?
From a veil, in my opinion. My belief is, personally, that we make a conscious choice to come down and have an experience here. I know that a lot of people believe that we have one life, and a lot of people resonate with the fact that we have many lives. My personal belief is that we have many lives. But whether we have one life or many lives, I do believe that free will was a part of the equation. I believe we had a choice to come here.
Okay. So I have a question for you regarding free will. Can you have a lot of love and light in your life and not be awake?
Of course you can. You can, first of all, people can express love and light towards you. But no matter how much people express love and light towards you, if you cannot receive that, if you're in a place where you don't believe that you're worthy of it, if you're in a place where you believe in the illusion that has been sold to you, then receiving that love and light is very difficult. It might seem like it should be so easy, but some of us have a much more difficult time receiving than we do giving.
And some probably don't even know what love truly looks like.
A lot of people think love looks like something completely the opposite of what it looks like, because that's what they've been coded to believe. But again, that's subjective, and I don't want to pass judgment on what anybody else believes love is or is not.
So what do you think the purpose of an awakening is?
The purpose of awakening is to take your avatar into your own hands. We live this beautiful body, this beautiful life. It is rife with contrast, which is how we learn. There's no possible way to learn or appreciate those things that we have if we don't experience salt, if we don't experience a burn, if we don't experience what it feels like to be lied to, and maybe even to tell a lie to someone else. Oh my gosh, how much have you learned from the lies that you've told? You don't want to keep telling lies, but something tells me that you've learned a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about other people from the contrast that you've experienced in this life. You still want to choose at some point into a much more honest path, because that's what your heart is going to feel best about at the end of the night. And choosing truth as a way of living is not for the other people, it's for yourself. It's so you can sleep well. But it doesn't change the fact that you're going to have more empathy for someone who may have told you a lie before, if you've experienced what that's like and you've learned to forgive yourself for it. I can assure you that the darkness that I've experienced in my life, which is plenty, more than plenty, has made me deeply empathetic to the people that I would like to see rise, the people that I'd like to see find their own magnificence. I know that the egoic experiences that you've had in your life will make it easier for you to understand the ego. I know that the points in your life that you don't really want to think back on because they bring you pain, upon looking back on those things, they've made it so that you can empathize with the world better. I know that the things that I've gone through, in addition to the things that I've done, have made it so I can empathize with the world better. However, there comes a point in time where you choose consciously, out of the cycle of things happening to you, which they're not really happening to you, but it feels like it because you're not living consciously. and choose to take the control of your own life, take control of your own avatar. I see my mommy coming. Hello, mother.
Okay, so as it relates to a light worker, then a light worker is one who understands the darkness. And
This is a light worker coming and walking up right now. She doesn't know it, but she is. She's an angel in human form. Don't tell her that she's a light worker, though. It's a secret.
All right, so
Hi, mommy.
Hi, sweetheart.
How are you?
Hey, sweetie.
I,
Are you being
This is just a recording right
Yeah.
now.
All right.
She just accidentally bumped into a conversation, and it was perfect. Perfect timing.
so then let's continue that questioning.
Okay.
The darkness that one experiences is all of this coding, as you say. The coding, the experiences, the memories, the emotions that we've experienced as a
Right.
child. Okay. So the darkness comes into play as a light worker. How?
Well, a couple ways. First of all, a lot of that is a veil that we chose when we came into this world. So when you start to have these feelings, when someone's sharing a truth with you and it feels like, oh my gosh, my heart is just radiating right now. I can feel that truth. Well, the reason it feels that profound is because it's a memory you're having. It's not because you're learning something for the first time. You're remembering something that your soul has known before. When we came down here, every single one of us chose a veil. We can't know our divinity and come down here and learn the way that we need to learn, but we can remember it at some point and put it into action. Now, when we choose the conscious path of raising our vibration, typically people, I don't want to say typically, a lot of people may or may not recognize just how deeply connected we are to literally every other human being on this planet. I don't care if you've met someone, I don't care if you think about them, I don't care if you like them, hate them, or anything. We are all connected, deeply connected. And so when I do soul work, when I do things that help me to improve my life and to raise my vibration, it creates a ripple effect that not only allows others to do that a little bit more easily, but it also just can have an impact on just making their life a little bit better that day without them realizing it. So we have a really profound effect on literally every single human around us. And when we give ourselves permission to forgive ourselves for things, we also give other people permission to forgive themselves for things. When we forgive somebody else for something in the past, we give other people permission to forgive other people for something that's happened in their past.
So that's a good concept. Give me an example of that. Or tell us an example of that.
There was a point in time in my life where I think a lot of people that have suffered deep trauma in their life, a lot of that comes from sexual trauma, and I know that for me that was a challenge for a long time. It used to be something that I felt like I really had to think about all the time, and I had to talk about it to at least therapists. I mean, I didn't talk about it constantly with others, but I felt like in some way, if I let go of that it was making it okay what happened, and that it was not honoring how traumatic it truly had been for me, because I didn't really express openly at the time how traumatic it was. So once I understood the gravity of the trauma, I think part of me felt like I had to identify with that.
So you're referencing something that happened in your
Yes.
extreme past, or when you
when I was a child, yeah.
and you're letting go of this.
And
darkness
I
now.
did. I remember at a point when I let it go, and I realized that it had been weeks since I'd even thought about it. Weeks since I had even I'd even considered it. And that was such an incredible amount of peace that I found in my heart. And it's interesting that for a long time I had felt like holding on to it was how I needed to honor it. And what I realized eventually is that I needed to honor it by properly burying it. I needed to give it honor and recognize that those feelings were valid, but also recognize that I've grown. Who knows how much he's grown? I don't know his circumstances right now. He could be a completely different person today than he was then. I don't want to judge him based on who I was at 11 and who he was at 17. So I just recognize that there's no reason to let it affect my life anymore. And I believe that by releasing that trauma for myself, it has a ripple effect that allows other young women who have had similar experiences, or even other young men, or possibly even my the person who did this to me himself, because he was a victim also, which tends to be the situation. So maybe he'll finally be able to forgive himself. Maybe other people will be able to forgive themselves or their abusers. But either way, I know that it added a level of peace to my life that I didn't even know could exist before that, because I was too worried that letting go of it would mean making it okay. And that's not the truth.
Okay. So let me summarize.
Okay, please.
You, as a light worker, you would help someone find a paradigm in the past, or memory or emotion in the past that has been giving them density or gravity, as we say.
If they feel like they want to talk about it, and that would be healing for them.
Okay.
Yes.
And so once a light worker, in the case where we're talking about this example, make them realize, or help them realize is a better word, help them realize that they really can release this emotion. Okay?
If they're ready.
If they're ready.
And we can talk about that in detail.
And that would send or break some type of bond, or etheric bond, or a chemical bond, or a physical bond between the offendee and the offender.
It has the potential to, if the offender allows it. I mean, there's still free will. The offender can hold on to their frustration,
Right.
or their
But
guilt or whatever. But it etherically, it is dramatically higher chance that they will be able to forgive themselves. And forgiveness is the only way to heal the wound.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk more about how to forgive the wound, or a wound, or another person.
Okay. Well, forgiveness is, first of all, something that we really truly need to recognize is for, as much as you want to think that it's for the other person, it's truly not. I believe it was Nelson Mandela who said, after being imprisoned for decades, that he instantly forgave those who had wrongfully imprisoned him. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but I know he said something to the effect of, if he didn't release that, he would have remained in prison long after he went on to become the president of his country, because he allowed himself to forgive grievous things. I also recognize that there's extreme complexity that goes into human behavior, and while I in no way want to justify what happened to me, I also would not want to live the life that he led, that led him to make that decision, and I understand that that is worthy of compassion. So while I don't want to condone negative behaviors, I at least want to be compassionate of the fact that every human being becomes how they are and who they are through a lifetime of coding, and there's no one who can't start over. I don't care if you're 83. I don't care if you're 8 years old. I don't care if you're 35. I don't care if you're sitting in prison right now. I don't care if you're a priest. I don't care if you are a witch. I don't care what you are. If you recognize that your decisions in your life is toxically affecting yourself or others, or your feelings about your heart or your own magnificence, there's no reason you have to choose to be the same version of yourself that you have been in the past. And everyone deserves compassion for their growth process. Everyone. Everyone.
So let's do you mind doing a visual? Give us kind of a walkthrough visual of how somebody would go inside and start the process of forgiving themselves.
I think that that's so individual. It would be hard for me to say that.
Just one example. Just an idea.
Well, I'll talk about what I did. I'll give a personal example. When I recognized how much my inner child was affecting the way that my decisions were moving forward, I realized that I really needed to do some what we call shadow work. And what that entailed was me visually taking myself in a point of meditation to my childhood home. This home was built by my father, who is a magnificent builder. And
you took yourself in meditation?
I took myself in there in meditation. My parents lived there for a few years before I was born, and until a couple years after I had moved out. So really all my childhood memories at least take place while living there. And my dad built it with his own hands, and my mother always had it filled with sweet smells. So there were a lot of nostalgic things I was able to kind of take myself there with. And in my dream, or in my meditative state, I remember walking in and trying to create the feeling, the smell, the essence as much as possible, walking down the stairways, the winding stairway to the basement. Specifically, I took myself to a bedroom that I don't necessarily even know why I chose that room. I had lots of bedrooms as a kid. But I took myself to a bedroom in the basement, and I went into the closet, and sure enough, there was a little version of myself huddled up crying. And I went and I sat down and I told her how amazing she was. I told her how brave she is. I told her how the thoughts that she has in her head that make her sometimes worry if she's not a good person are actually wonderful thoughts, and that she should be very proud of herself for those. I told her she has a wonderful heart, and that anyone that can't see how wonderful her heart is missing out on a wonderful gem. I told her how inspired she is and how much God loves her. I told her that she was smarter than she realized, and that she would recognize it someday. I spent some time gaining her trust so that she could hopefully feel a little bit less terrified, because while she did a really, really good job showing the world how star-spangledly awesome and perfect she was, and she tried really hard, I know how terrified that little girl was, and I know that that little girl needed to feel safe. So for me, that was a way that I was able to take myself to a time of childhood and start to tell myself even then that it was okay to forgive myself for what were highly inspired thoughts, but they were terrifying thoughts to have based on a lot of circumstances in my life. So,
So you are actually, in your own process, you actually went back in time to talk to yourself.
And this is called soul retrieval, based on a lot of different practices in ancient Egyptian wisdom, as well as in a lot of shamanic practices. This is called soul retrieval. I know that there's a lot of other ways of doing it and other titles for it, but what it is a process of literally kind of taking yourself in your essence back to a point in time that may or may not have started to develop some really unhealthy coding, so that you can start to release that coding etherically today. It's like super awesome spiritual time travel, and believe it or not, it's the most effective thing I've ever done to help to learn to love myself, to trust myself, to feel more confident. I've always had really a high connection in some of these higher chakras. I've had a lot of high inspiration and things like that, but I've never had confidence. I've never had these lower chakra things. I've never felt secure in myself. I've never felt brave. I've never felt those things, and those all came as I started to heal my inner child. This guy, he pretty much had the lower chakras nailed, but the upper chakras...
As do most men.
Well, not necessarily men, but
We'll
the masculine, yeah, and that's a different thing. We can go talk about that another day. But as he has started to work with his inner child, he's starting to open up more to inspiration into all of these upper, higher feminine chakras, and learning to go with the flow, which is so not easy for this guy. But learning to, and it's a process. We'll admit it's a process that is being worked on all the time, but it's more fun than it is difficult, and when it's difficult, it's worth it.
Okay, so since we only have a couple minutes left, let me ask one last question, and that is, wow, that story of meeting yourself as a small child is pretty incredible, but it also seems a little scary. So what's the purpose? Why do we want to become conscious or awaken?
It doesn't have to be scary, because you get to be the person who is going and providing love and light for that little child. So you take it very seriously, like you would go to primary children's and deal with a little kid who's going through a really scary thing. You nurture them, you love them, you show them all of the love and care that you would have hoped that you would be shown. And it's a really great opportunity to not only empower your inner child, but to empower your personal self now, because you are the person who's healing it. Now, I can help guide you through that. He can help guide you through that. There's other people, lots of them, that can help guide you through that. And it's unique to everyone. But ultimately, you're the person who's healing yourself, which is so fantastically empowering. Go you.
So as many there are a lot of different types of light workers then, right?
Limitless.
Yeah.
There's no two that are the same, just like there's no two humans that are the same, just like there's not supposed to be any two humans that are the same. No two light workers are the same.
So we would encourage everyone to
Find their own inner
explore
light.
and, yeah.
Find your own inner light worker. We are all one.
Yeah.
As soon as you're willing to share your light, share it authentically, and speak your truth.
Research and study.
Research and study. You're welcome to ask us questions, or we can point you towards a million other places to research if you don't want to ask us.
All right.
Love and light.
Love and light.
Have a great day. Bye.